Good evening, everyone. It's so easy to feel confused and hurt when someone we care about seems distant, detached, or, quite frankly, ignores us. We start questioning, if they love me, why would they ignore me? It can feel like a punch to the gut, and we often spiral into doubt about our worth and the relationship itself. But let's pause here, because the truth isn't as simple as a surface level reading might suggest, Doc, when we think about relationships, whether romantic, familial, or even friendships. The first thing that often comes to mind is the time spent together. We think about shared experiences, conversations, physical closeness, and the warmth that comes from being in someone's presence. While these are undeniably important aspects of connection, there's another element that is just as essential: space. At first glance, the idea of space in a relationship might seem counterintuitive. After all, aren't we supposed to be there for each other all the time, always ready to provide support, love, and reassurance? The cultural expectation that love is synonymous with constant togetherness can be overwhelming. But true intimacy isn't built only on closeness. It's also nourished by the ability to step back, to allow the relationship to breathe, and to give each person the room to be fully themselves. The necessity of individuality. One of the most profound aspects of space in relationships is that it allows each person to maintain their individuality. When two people come together, there's a natural tendency for their identities to become intertwined. They begin to define themselves not just by who they are as individuals, but also by the role they play in each other's lives. This is entirely natural and in many ways beautiful. However, it can also lead to a kind of dependency where each person's sense of self becomes reliant on the other. Over time, this can lead to a loss of personal identity, or the feeling that you can't be who you truly are without the other person. Space in a relationship helps preserve individuality. It reminds us that we are still separate people with our own passions, dreams, and needs. When we have the freedom to be alone, we allow ourselves the opportunity to reconnect with our own sense of self. We are able to pursue personal goals, nurture friendships, and explore aspects of ourselves that may not be fully realized within the confines of a relationship. This time apart doesn't mean that love is absent. Rather, it strengthens the bond by reminding both people that they are valuable, whole individuals capable of thriving on their own. The growth that comes with distance. Personal growth often requires solitude. Whether it's processing emotions, reflecting on life choices, or simply enjoying a hobby, growth happens when we are allowed to experience life on our own terms. Without space, we might become stagnant, trapped in patterns of behavior or thinking that don't serve us. Space gives us the freedom to grow, both individually and together. I think about it: if you're constantly in the presence of someone, it can be difficult to fully understand who you are, what you need, or where you want to go. Without time for introspection, we risk being overly influenced by others' opinions or losing sight of what we truly want out of life. It's in moments of solitude, when we have the opportunity to reflect on our own thoughts and feelings, that we begin to understand what makes us tick, what our values are, and what our purpose in life is. In relationships, the process of growing individually and together isn't a contradiction. It's the secret to long-lasting connection. When two people are both growing, pursuing their passions, discovering new things about themselves, and coming into their own, they bring back a richness to the relationship that wouldn't exist if they were always in each other's shadows. They have fresh perspectives to share, new ideas to explore, and a deeper understanding of who they are as individuals. This continual growth cycle makes the relationship more vibrant, dynamic, and fulfilling. The freedom to heal and reflect. Space also provides the necessary room for healing. All relationships, no matter how strong, face challenges, disagreements, misunderstandings, or difficult periods can leave us feeling hurt or emotionally drained. In these moments, it can be tempting to seek constant reassurance from our partner, to want to talk everything out immediately. However, sometimes the most healing thing we can do is to give ourselves space to process emotions independently. When we allow ourselves the space to heal, we are more likely to approach conflicts with a clearer mind and a calmer heart. The pressure to resolve everything in the heat of the moment can lead to rash decisions or words we may regret. In contrast, space gives us time to reflect, to understand our own emotions, and to approach the situation with more empathy and understanding when the time comes to reconnect. Moreover, when we give our partner the space they need to heal, we show respect for their individual process. We don't force them to conform to our timeline or expectations. Instead, we trust that they too will return when they're ready, stronger and more in tune with their own needs. Trust and respect in space. One of the most beautiful gifts of space is that it requires trust. When we give someone space, we are demonstrating our trust in them, that they are capable of handling their own emotions, that they have their own paths to walk, and that they are not abandoning us by needing time apart. This trust deepens the bond because it acknowledges the independence of the other person while still honoring the relationship. At the same time, space requires respect. It's not about withdrawing or creating distance as a form of punishment. It's about mutual understanding that time apart doesn't signify a lack of love, but rather an appreciation of the other person's needs. Respecting each other's boundaries and giving each other the room to grow individually strengthens the relationship in the long run. Creating healthy boundaries. Boundaries are essential for any healthy relationship, and space is a powerful way to establish them. When you have the freedom to set boundaries, whether they involve alone time, emotional space, or physical distance, you are communicating that you value both your needs and the other person's. These boundaries don't signify emotional distance, but rather emotional health. They create an environment in which both people can thrive as individuals rather than being overly dependent on each other for validation, emotional regulation, or purpose. In conclusion, space is love. Ultimately, the power of space in relationships lies in its ability to foster deeper connection, growth, and understanding. It allows each person to be whole, to evolve, and to return to the relationship with a fuller sense of self. Space isn't about separation, it's about expansion. It's the fertile ground in which love, trust, and intimacy can flourish. When we understand the value of space, we come to realize that the greatest act of love we can offer is not always being close, but knowing when to step back, trust, and allow both people the room to grow. Space in relationships isn't just a luxury, it's a necessity. And when we embrace it with compassion and understanding, it transforms the way we love, heal, and thrive together. Vulnerability is often seen as something that requires words, actions, or gestures. We tend to associate it with emotional outpouring, shared confessions, or open expressions of need. It's the moments when we open up to someone, share our fears, dreams, or insecurities, and trust that they will hold that space for us. But there's another form of vulnerability that's just as important, and perhaps even more profound, the vulnerability that exists in silence. In a world that is constantly clamoring for attention, where phones ping, notifications buzz, and conversations never seem to end, it can be difficult to fully embrace the silence. Silence can be uncomfortable. It can feel like a void that needs to be filled, a gap in communication that signifies distance, misunderstanding, or uncertainty. But in silence, there is an extraordinary vulnerability that we often overlook. The power of quiet reflection. Silence offers the space for introspection, where we can reflect on our own thoughts, feelings, and experiences. To sit in the quiet and be with ourselves without the distraction of others' voices or the pressure to perform is an act of vulnerability in and of itself. We expose ourselves to our own emotions and truths without the crutch of external validation or opinions. This is where the real work of emotional growth happens. When we are alone in silence, we are forced to confront ourselves. We might have to sit with uncomfortable emotions, face past wounds, or reflect on patterns of behavior that we haven't fully processed. The vulnerability here lies in our willingness to be open to whatever surfaces, whether it's joy, sadness, regret, or hope. In silence, we allow ourselves to be human, to feel all the complexities of our emotions and experiences without judgment. Silence as an invitation for connection. When we are with someone, and there's a moment of silence, it can be tempting to fill that space with words, chatter, small talk, or questions that keep the conversation flowing. But sometimes the most powerful moments of connection happen when we are simply present with each other in the quiet. This is a form of vulnerability, choosing not to fill the silence with noise, but instead to allow it to be shared between two people. In these moments, we are trusting each other enough to simply be. We don't have to perform, explain, or justify our emotions. We are allowing each other the space to exist without needing to fill the air with conversation or reassurance. There is a deep vulnerability in this kind of connection because we are putting aside our need for validation and letting the silence speak for itself. Think about the times when you've been with someone and a comfortable silence fell between you. Maybe you were sitting side by side, both lost in your own thoughts, yet there was no discomfort, no anxiety. The absence of words didn't signal a lack of connection. Instead, it spoke volumes about trust, acceptance, and understanding. In these quiet moments, we are saying, I don't need to prove anything. I'm here with you, and this moment is enough. Silence as space for emotional healing. When we are emotionally wounded, our instinct is often to seek out words, explanations, or reassurances. We want to hear from others, to be told that everything will be okay, or to receive advice on how to fix things. But sometimes what we truly need is silence, a space where we can heal without the interference of others' opinions. Vulnerability in this silence means allowing ourselves to sit with our pain, confusion, or grief. We don't need to rush through it or explain it to anyone. We simply need to experience it. Healing can't happen when we are constantly seeking to be fixed or told what to do. Sometimes the most vulnerable thing we can do is sit with our emotions in stillness, knowing that it's okay to not have all the answers. In the silence, we are also giving others the space to heal on their own. When we choose to be silent in times of difficulty, we allow our loved ones the freedom to process their emotions in their own time, without pressure. This mutual respect for space allows for emotional healing that is organic, not rushed. Vulnerability as listening in the silence. Listening is often considered one of the most vulnerable acts we can engage in, especially in relationships. To truly listen without interrupting, without preparing a response, without jumping in with advice is an act of openness and humility. But listening doesn't always have to be verbal. It can also be nonverbal. Sometimes the most profound act of listening is simply being present in the silence, attuned to the other person's energy, body language, and unspoken feelings. There is a vulnerability in allowing someone to express themselves without jumping in to fix or direct the conversation. In these moments, we acknowledge that words aren't always necessary to understand what the other person is going through. Silence becomes a language of its own, a space where two people can share a moment of understanding without saying anything at all. Silence and the fear of rejection. Another reason silence can be so vulnerable is that it brings with it the fear of rejection. When we stop talking, when we pull back, we wonder, will they still love me? Will they still care for me if I'm not constantly filling the space with words and actions? The vulnerability of silence is the willingness to trust that our worth is not dependent on constant communication or performance. We are opening ourselves up to the possibility that love doesn't need to be constantly reaffirmed through words or presence. It can exist in the quiet moments as well. When we choose to remain silent, whether we are processing our own emotions or simply sharing space with someone else, we are saying, I trust you. I trust myself. We are trusting that love can still exist in these moments of stillness, that connection can still be felt in the absence of words. In conclusion, the quiet courage of vulnerability. Vulnerability in silence requires immense courage. It asks us to face our emotions without distractions, to be present without the need for constant validation, and to trust that love and connection don't always need to be spoken to be felt. In the quiet, we find the strength to be ourselves, to process our experiences, and to show up for others without needing to perform. The silence is not an empty void. It is a rich, fertile space where the most meaningful connections are often made. By embracing vulnerability in silence, we learn that sometimes the most powerful way to connect is not by filling the air with words, but by simply being present and open to whatever emerges. Silence is not something to be feared or avoided. It is something to be embraced as an opportunity for growth, healing, and deep connection. We live in a world that is more connected than ever before. Our phones, our social media accounts, and our constant digital presence have made it possible for us to be in touch with anyone, anywhere, at any time. We can communicate instantly, share photos and thoughts in real time, and stay updated on the lives of our friends, family, and even strangers across the globe. But despite all this connectivity, we are beginning to realize something profound. The illusion of constant connection is, in many ways, a disconnection from what truly matters. The perpetual pressure to be available. At the core of the illusion of constant connection is a societal expectation to always be reachable. We are expected to respond to texts, emails, social media notifications, and phone calls almost immediately. The ping of a notification triggers a sense of urgency, compelling us to drop everything and respond. In the professional world, we're expected to be on at all times, whether it's answering an email after hours or being available for virtual meetings at any moment. In personal relationships, the same pressure applies. Messages must be returned quickly, calls should be picked up without delay, and the expectation is that we are always present and responsive. This constant availability, however, can lead to burnout. We begin to feel like we're not allowed to have boundaries, to take time for ourselves, or to disconnect from the digital world. The idea that we should always be connected leads to the exhaustion of being constantly on, constantly available, and constantly expected to perform. This pressure not only erodes our well-being, but also compromises the quality of our interactions. When we are perpetually connected, we're often distracted, overwhelmed, and unable to give our full attention to the present moment. The cost of fragmented attention. When we are caught up in the illusion of constant connection, we often find that our attention is fragmented. We're no longer truly present in any one interaction. We are texting while watching TV, scrolling through social media while in a meeting, or responding to work emails while trying to engage in a conversation with a loved one. Our attention is pulled in so many directions at once that we end up doing a disservice to the very relationships and tasks that require our full focus. This constant switching between tasks, multitasking, if you will, has been shown to reduce the quality of our work and our relationships. The reality is that when we are constantly connected, we are rarely able to engage fully with anything or anyone. Our relationships become superficial, reduced to quick exchanges of messages, emojis, and likes rather than meaningful, in-depth conversations. The constant bombardment of notifications keeps us from being truly present in the moment, making it harder to form deep, authentic connections with others. The more connected we become in a digital sense, the more disconnected we often feel from the people and experiences that truly matter. The fear of missing out, FOMO, and its impact on well-being. One of the most insidious effects of the illusion of constant connection is the anxiety it creates around the fear of missing out, FOMO. As we scroll through social media, we are bombarded with images and updates of others living what appears to be a more exciting, more fulfilling life. This constant stream of curated content, where people share only the highlights of their lives, creates a sense of inadequacy and longing. We begin to feel like we are missing out on important moments, experiences, or opportunities simply because we're not constantly plugged into the same digital world. FOMO can lead to a diminished sense of self-worth. It makes us feel like we need to be constantly engaged, constantly on top of things, and constantly sharing our own experiences to keep up. This desire to be always connected, to always be in the know, takes a toll on our mental health. It leads to comparison anxiety and a sense of disconnection from our own lives. Instead of focusing on our own experiences and what brings us joy, we become fixated on what everyone else is doing. We are no longer present in our own lives because we are too consumed with the idea that we are missing out. The necessity of disconnection for personal growth. Despite the pressure to stay constantly connected, one of the most important things we can do for our personal growth is to disconnect. This doesn't mean abandoning relationships or rejecting technology, but it means setting intentional boundaries to protect our time, energy, and mental health. Disconnecting is about creating space for ourselves to reflect, recharge, and engage in deep, meaningful activities that require our full attention. When we disconnect from the constant digital noise, we give ourselves the opportunity to reconnect with our inner selves. We can rediscover the simple joys of reading a book without distractions, going for a walk in nature, or having a heartfelt conversation with someone we care about. In these moments of disconnection, we find clarity and focus. We are able to engage more fully with our own thoughts, desires, and goals. Disconnection, in fact, leads to a greater sense of connection to ourselves, to others, and to the world around us. The illusion of connection vs. authentic connection. The ultimate danger of the illusion of constant connection is that it convinces us that we are truly connected when in fact we are not. While we may be exchanging a flurry of texts, likes, and comments, these interactions often lack depth and meaning. Authentic connection, on the other hand, requires presence. It requires slowing down and being fully engaged, both in our relationships and in our own lives. It's about quality, not quantity. We may think that we are building relationships through social media and texting, but the truth is that these forms of communication often fall short of the kind of deep connection we truly need. True connection requires vulnerability, face-to-face interaction, and the willingness to be present in the moment, something that's difficult to achieve when we're distracted by a constant stream of notifications. The freedom of real, in the moment connection. The antidote to the illusion of constant connection is the freedom to be present, to let go of the pressure to always be available, to always respond immediately, and to always be in the loop. True connection happens when we put down our phones, close our laptops, and engage with the world around us without the need for constant digital validation. It happens when we sit down with someone and share a meaningful conversation, uninterrupted by distractions. It happens when we allow ourselves to feel our emotions without the pressure to immediately broadcast them to the world. When we let go of the illusion of constant connection, we open up the space for genuine relationships to blossom, relationships that are rooted in authenticity, presence, and mutual respect. We can cultivate deeper connections with ourselves and with others by embracing the idea that connection doesn't require constant communication. It requires quality, depth, and the courage to be present. In conclusion, disconnect to reconnect. The illusion of constant connection, fueled by the need to always be online and always available, is an exhausting and ultimately shallow way of engaging with the world. While technology has undoubtedly improved our ability to stay in touch, it has also made it more difficult to cultivate true, meaningful connections. The key to overcoming this illusion is to embrace the power of disconnection. By creating space for ourselves to step away from the digital world, we give ourselves the freedom to connect more authentically with others, to nurture our own growth, and to rediscover the simple joys of being present in the moment. Growth is one of life's most profound experiences. It is inevitable, sometimes painful, and often unpredictable, but it's also essential for us to become the individuals we are meant to be. Growth happens not just in our careers or in our relationships, but deeply within our emotional, psychological, and spiritual selves. It is the process through which we evolve, learn, and transform. And yet, despite its inevitability, many of us struggle with the uncertainty and discomfort that comes with it. The truth is, growth is a messy and nonlinear journey. And in order to truly grow, we must learn to trust the process even when we can't see the end result. The illusion of immediate results, one of the most challenging aspects of growth, is the expectation of immediate results. We live in a world that is accustomed to instant gratification. Technology, social media, and even our professional lives often demand quick results. We expect things to happen fast, and we want our progress to be visible and tangible immediately. Whether we're working on our physical health, learning a new skill, or healing from a difficult emotional experience, we often want to see immediate improvements, or we begin to doubt the process itself. But growth is not a linear process. It doesn't always happen in a straight line, nor does it happen in the way we expect. Sometimes we take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Sometimes progress seems to stall altogether. And in these moments, it's easy to become frustrated, discouraged, or even to question whether the effort is worth it. But the key to growth is to trust that the process is unfolding in its own time, in its own way. The seed does not sprout overnight, and the tree does not grow in a day. The process takes time, and that time is necessary for the roots to form, for the branches to reach, and for the fruit to appear. Embracing discomfort and uncertainty. Growth requires discomfort. It requires us to step outside our comfort zones, to take risks, and to venture into the unknown. It is only when we move beyond what feels familiar and safe that we begin to discover new strengths, capabilities, and perspectives. But this discomfort is often what holds us back. We fear failure, rejection, or not being good enough. We fear the pain of not knowing what comes next, or the uncertainty of how things will turn out. The paradox of growth is that we must lean into that discomfort. We must trust that it is through the struggle that we become stronger, wiser, and more capable. Just as a muscle grows through resistance, our emotional and psychological resilience grows through facing challenges. When we encounter setbacks, disappointments, or moments of doubt, it's easy to want to give up, to take the easier path, or to abandon the process altogether. But this is where the real growth happens, when we push through the discomfort, when we face the uncertainty head on, and when we continue to move forward, even when the way seems unclear. Patience and the role of time. Patience is one of the most difficult virtues to cultivate, especially in a world that celebrates speed and efficiency. Yet when it comes to growth, time is our ally. Growth doesn't happen overnight, it unfolds gradually, sometimes imperceptibly, and often requires us to take a step back and look at how far we've come rather than focusing on how far we have left to go. Trusting the process of growth means accepting that things may not happen on our timeline, and that's okay. It's about embracing the ebb and flow of progress. There will be periods where you feel stuck or where things seem to be going in the wrong direction. There will be moments when you question if you're making the right choices. These moments are all part of the process, but when we cultivate patience and give ourselves the grace to move at our own pace, we allow for the necessary time and space for growth to take root. We often look for shortcuts in the process, but the truth is that growth cannot be rushed. We cannot skip the uncomfortable or difficult parts and still expect to emerge stronger, wiser, or more capable. Time is the element that allows growth to deepen and strengthen. Like the seasons, growth comes in cycles, and each cycle is necessary to prepare us for what's next. The role of reflection and growth. Trusting the process of growth also involves reflection. We often become so focused on our end goals or the challenges we're facing that we forget to pause and reflect on how far we've come. Growth is not only about moving forward, it's about recognizing the progress we've made along the way. Taking the time to reflect on our experiences, the lessons we've learned, the obstacles we've overcome, and the ways in which we've changed helps to ground us in the present moment. Reflection reminds us that growth is happening even when it's not immediately apparent. It helps us acknowledge our resilience, celebrate small wins, and stay motivated even when the larger goal feels distant. In moments of doubt, reflection can be the anchor that helps us stay grounded and trust that we are exactly where we need to be. Surrendering control. Part of trusting the process of growth is learning to surrender control. We may have a vision of what we want our growth to look like, but often the path to that vision is unpredictable and full of surprises. Sometimes the journey leads us in directions we didn't expect, towards challenges we didn't anticipate or opportunities we didn't foresee. These unexpected turns can be unsettling, but they are often where the most profound growth occurs. When we try to control every aspect of the process, when we micromanage every step or insist on things going exactly as we planned, we often resist the natural flow of growth. It's important to recognize that growth is a partnership between our efforts and the larger forces at play. We may set goals, take action, and work hard, but the outcome is never entirely within our control. Trusting the process means allowing room for uncertainty, for the possibility that things might unfold differently than we expected. And that's okay. Sometimes the most beautiful growth comes from surrendering our expectations and embracing the unfolding journey. Learning from setbacks and failures. Trusting the process doesn't mean that growth will always feel easy or smooth. In fact, setbacks and failures are often some of the most valuable teachers in the process of growth. When we face obstacles, we have the opportunity to learn about our own resilience, our capacity for adaptation, and our ability to keep going, even in the face of adversity. Each setback is not a sign that we are failing, it is simply a part of the growth process. Failure is not the opposite of success, it is an integral part of success. It's through failure that we learn our greatest lessons, refine our approach, and build the strength we need to continue moving forward. Trusting the process means viewing setbacks not as insurmountable barriers, but as opportunities for growth. It means recognizing that our journey will be filled with ups and downs, and that's part of what makes it meaningful. In conclusion, the journey of becoming. Trusting the process of growth is an act of faith. It requires us to believe that we are moving in the right direction, even when the path is unclear, uncomfortable, or slow. It's about releasing the need for immediate results and embracing the fact that growth happens in its own time. The process of growth is not linear, nor is it always easy, but it is always worthwhile. By trusting the process, we honor the journey of becoming the evolution of who we are meant to be. Through patience, reflection, surrender, and the willingness to learn from our setbacks, we can move through growth with grace and resilience, knowing that each step, no matter how small, is part of a greater, beautiful transformation. As we stand at the crossroads of our growth, it's important to remember that this journey is not a race, but a process of beautiful unfolding of who we are meant to become. Trusting the process means embracing the moments of uncertainty, allowing ourselves the time to reflect, and acknowledging that setbacks are not failures, but stepping stones to something greater. Growth is not about perfection, nor is it about speed. It's about learning to trust that every moment, every challenge, and every quiet step forward is part of a larger, meaningful transformation. So as you continue on your path, I encourage you to be kind to yourself. Let go of the need to control everything, and instead trust that you are exactly where you need to be. Trust that the process of growth, though it may not always be visible or easy, is working in your favor. Embrace the discomfort, surrender to the unknown, and know that in time, you will look back and see how far you've come. Keep moving forward with faith, patience, and a deep belief in the process. You are growing, you are evolving, and you are becoming exactly who you are meant to be. And in that, there is immense power, beauty, and promise. Thank you.